Next up, we have Pat Martens.
Pat Martens with Bridge Preservation and Inspection Services. I'm a consultant. Work very closely with Hydro-Technologies and modified concrete suppliers in the hydro-demolition, latex modified concrete installation side of deck rehabilitation and preservation. And been doing a lot of these presentations, and I usually, have a pretty technical presentation with a lot of insight into the various facets of hydro-demolition and latex modified concrete, but I thought I'd try a little bit different approach this time. So I was trying to decide, do I want to talk about hydro-demolition and latex in North Carolina, or do I want to talk about Ed and Pat's excellent adventure out at Carolina Beach? Actually, Ed Liberati with Hydro-Technologies, my cohort here, and Jeff Hughes also with Hydro-Tech, and our wives, we all decided we were going to take an extended weekend prior to the conference and head out to Carolina Beach. And I had never been out to the beach in Carolina. I had never been actually to any of to anywhere really in North Carolina except kind of in and out of Raleigh once in a while. So, but it was a great weekend, and it started out like this. And for those of you who've heard me talk before, I often will mention Seinfeld references. And so my adventure at the rental car agency went similar to Jerry Seinfeld's when he's talking to the car rental agent trying to pick up a car, if you remember that bit. He went in to get his car, and they did not have his car for him. He had the reservation, but they didn't have the car. Same thing happened to me. I'm in Raleigh, and I went to get my car. Thank you, Mr. Martens, for being a loyal enterprise member. And they took care of me in the office and sent me out to get my car. And the agent out there says, well, we don't have any cars. I don't understand. I've got a reservation. You can take the reservation, but you can't hold the reservation. And that's the most important part of the reservation. But they did say, we don't have any cars. You can have any car on the lot. Well, my wife just happened to be standing next to this Mustang convertible. She says, well, what about this one? Before I could even say anything, she said, what about this one? And the person said, you got it. So I got to spend the weekend driving around in the Mustang convertible and enjoying the Carolina Beach. We spent several days out there on the beach just relaxing. I think this is Ed up on the surfboard here coming on in. So we had a very nice weekend, and very, very enjoyable. So let me get into now, I guess, what I should be talking about, hydro-demolition and latex. And so for this presentation, what I wanted to do is I wanted to try to get into some of the data, kind of mine some of that, evaluate some of that, but I found it was very difficult. I did get some help. North Carolina DOT, Aaron Earwood here had sent me a few photos and some information. And this looks like this is like one of the first adventures here with hydro-demolition here in North Carolina in 2004, a demonstration project out in Bertie County. So just Bertie, that's kind of in the eastern part of the state up there in District 1. And what I did was Hydro-Technologies here through about the last 10 years has been kind of taking in data as the lettings come out from various states. So I was able to kind of latch on to some of that and pull the information I could out of the North Carolina side of the lettings to show projects, bridges that had been let in the last 10 years or so using hydro-demolition technology. I think it's fairly decent. It could be off a little bit, but at least it kind of gets you in the ballpark as far as what amount of work is being processed through the DOT. So you can see about a little over 400,000 square yards of hydro-demolition work, 82 projects, 216 bridges. Pretty good chunk. And for the southeast region, I'd say that's probably leading the region as far as the states that are active in the region. Virginia's probably pretty close right behind there too, I would say. Just another look at data. I kind of broke it down by districts. Might be kind of hard to see on the screen up there, but it kind of shows You don't see nearly as many bridges done in the eastern part of the state, but I think that kind of leads itself back to kind of the discussion yesterday about the number of bridges and the size and the conditions that you encounter from east to west. The western side gets a lot more deterioration, and there's a lot more, you got longer bridges, so you'll see more square yardage, possibly like in District 1. They've got a pretty big bit bridge there, it looks like that they did. So you don't have as many bridges in the east, but you have bigger bridges with a lot more area in there. So it just kind of shows you a little bit of the kind of the trend there. So just to highlight a few of the bridges, this is from Greene County, one of the very first bridges that was undertaken by the department. And see, when you get a new process, new products, you get everybody out of the office wants to go out there and kick the rock around and stomp on the rebars and stuff. So you got to see what the new toy is all about. This was a fairly modest bridge, 241 feet long, fairly low ADT, and not a real big bridge, but a good starter bridge to get the process going and just see how the whole thing works. What I'd like to do is I like to kind of dig into the data a little bit to see how it performs. So it looks like we have, this bridge was actually down in condition 3 as far as the NBI rating for the deck, according to this is from the info bridge that I pulled up the federal data on. But it looks like, after, 15 plus years or so, you're still holding a 6 on that bridge. So it's doing its job. You take a 3 or a 4 rated deck, that's pretty deteriorated. And trying to salvage those things can sometimes be pretty tough to do. And really, they're kind of deck replacement at that range. But a lot of times you just have to do what you have to do to keep the bridge open. So this is just a kind of a screenshot from the Google map. Another bridge out in Bertie. This was a pretty good size one out over the Roanoke, a little over a mile long. 45 days to totally rehab the surface. One thing I noted there was the detour there, 50 miles to get around there, 4,000 ADT and a 1968 vintage bridge. Again, you're looking at a deck that was in the 4 range, but now it's still kind of holding in there at about a 6. So that's pretty good performance for an old bridge. And then I tried to go into some of the element level data even to see if I could pick anything out of there. Kind of hard to get a lot, but you can see the slab itself, for the most part, it's still in condition state 1. But these are some of the pictures from that bridge. So if you look at that and you see what you have, you got a real minefield there. So a little bit of the operation to mill it and to hydro. And then here's kind of another Google Map shot there of the bridge surface. So it's doing pretty good for 15 years. Another one up here in the far northeast, Currituck. Actually, Rick Nelson kind of tipped me off to this one. He mentioned this was one that had really a rough ride in it. So this is one that not necessarily had a bad condition, but it was just wasn't riding very well. So hydro and latex was used to get it smoothed out and riding better. And it was about a 2.8 mile long structure. Looking at a lot of square footage there. And then one more, since we were down in the Carolina Beach area, might as well take a look at it while we're there. So I was able to get some shots out there Monday. This is down there over the Intercoastal Waterway. And about a half-mile long bridge, 164,000 square feet of deck. And this one was done back in 2012, so about 10 years on the bridge. And it went from a 4, and it's hanging in at a 6 right now. And the deck, actually this is the wearing surface data here shows, most of that is still in condition state 1. Got a little bit in condition state 2. So one of the challenges I was finding as I was going through the data here is I'm pulling data from 108 out of the federal tape, which is the wearing surface that's on the structure. And I'm looking for code 3 for latex modified concrete overlays. Well, what I'm finding is, and this is not unusual, it's not just North Carolina, I find this in a lot of states, is when we go in and hydroblast and we put on a new latex modified concrete wearing surface, we're essentially reestablishing the deck slab itself. So it's not like in the traditional means that we used to go in and just mill and patch and then put a true wearing surface on. Now we're actually reestablishing the slabs. So what I'm finding is agencies are basically coding to monolithic, they're just calling it monolithic, code 1. So what it does is it makes it very difficult to be able to track and pull the data out to find out how those bridges are performing that have the hydro-demolition surface prep on them. So it's just a little tougher, and that's something I guess agencies kind of deal with internally as far as how they accumulate that information. This is from that intracoastal waterway, just some of the shots of the surface itself. And it looked pretty good. I walked a good portion of it. I couldn't even really find any cracks in it, hardly. There were a few patches, a few minor patches out there, and there was one joint, expansion joint, I think, looked like it had some repair work done to it possibly at one time. So, but overall, looking pretty good. We did see, I just want to throw a few more shots in here. When we were out last weekend, they were having dog surfing. So never heard of it, never seen it. But I don't know what these dogs were thinking they were getting into, but here you got a dog out in the middle of a stick out in the water, probably wondering, what are these human beings doing to me? What's going on here? So did get a little bit of video of the dog surfing. Crazy stuff. There's one more. Kind of in the middle of the picture there in the distance. The waves coming in, there he goes, and right down. So, never seen that before, but I thought that was kind of funny. So I talked a little bit about hydro-demolition. Let me switch gears and talk about just latex modified concrete wearing surface. And the history on this in North Carolina kind of goes back to the early 1980s, which is pretty similar to a lot of states. A lot of states were doing this back in the 1980 time frame using type 1 cement. And the process back in the 80s, 90s was typically you're gonna mill, you're gonna sound, you're gonna get in there with jackhammers and patch it out, reestablish your deck surface, and then you're gonna go in and do your final cleaning, apply a scrub coat, and lay your overlay. The nice thing about when we got into hydro-demolition, we were able to eliminate the application of the scrub coat. Plus, we're getting a lot more bondable surface area, and we're getting a lot better surface preparation, I believe, for your overlay installations to hang onto there. So, just a few pictures. These are a couple Aaron had passed on to me. Some bridges been out there, 20, 25 years. In life. That's kind of what the expectation is for most of these overlay systems. And I will say, I think the sooner you can get into the bridge deck and get your overlay on before it deteriorates, I think your odds of getting more life are greatly enhanced. I know some new bridges that latex overlays have been installed on have been out for 35, 40 years and have very minimal to no chloride intrusion into the decks. This is a look at kind of the number of overlays out there. Looked like time period from 83 to 08, probably did about 100 or so in the state of North Carolina, and then you can see in 2009 through 17, that number has increased quite a bit through those years. And I was out looking at several overlays, actually several dozen overlays in kind of the Raleigh area, and I started to find, that's where I started to find the discrepancies in the data, which got me investigating the coding a lot more. The wearing surface data within North Carolina's tape looks like it shows about 222 installations, so I think a lot of those hydro installations a lot of those they're not showing that latex surface that's also on those particular bridges. And then the very early strength latex mixes, those came into play kind of in the late 90s. And that included use of type 3 and also the rapid set, which is a 3-hour strength game. So I got several charts here. They're real hard to read here. I'm just going to breeze through those. What these are showing is Modified Concrete Suppliers, who's one of the producers of latex modified concrete. Jobs they've done in North Carolina, these are jobs that they've worked on. So this is data from their database. And what I noticed, what really stood out to me is how many of these overlays are done with rapid set. I'd say North Carolina is really kind of the leader in this field when it comes to installation of rapid setting overlays. So kind of through the remainder of the time here, I just wanted to talk briefly about what you guys in North Carolina are doing with overnight work, kind of on-call work. We see this a lot in Virginia as well. And it's a pretty slick process. You go in there and you have a very limited window. In this particular case in Robeson County, it looks like I think it's 7 p.m. to 6 a.m. is the working time period. And you need contractors that know what they're doing for sure out there. You don't want just anybody out there trying to do this. You're looking at bridge decks with a fair amount of deterioration often. You have to be careful about the potential for full depth repairs out there. In this particular case, the contractor was able to do some full depth work out there prior to getting out and doing the hydro-demolition, which helps to expedite that process in an overnight application. So you're going to get out there, first thing, you're going to do your milling, and then you're going to get in it with your hydro-demolition. He's probably out there, if he's dropping the lane at 7, he's milling shortly thereafter. Probably by about 8, he's getting that hydro-blaster up and running. And it's going to take him several hours to hydro-blast and also do his vacuum collection, probably about a 3-hour window there to do that. And then you're going to vacuum all that material up, get yourself a good clean surface. Here the crew's out just spot checking, trying to make sure there are no delaminations left in there, because if there's delaminations left in there and you don't get them out of there, that's a potential failure area for you, a premature failure that you don't want to have to encounter. Getting the finish machine set up. Here they're going in with a high pressure water blaster as a final source of cleaning, generally running about 10,000 psi or so. Get it good and clean and then saturated and covered. And then what you're going to do is you're going to run your mobile mix truck out there, because all this material is mobile mixed. It's not going to be a ready mixed product. And that mobile mixer is going to back right up to the machine. He's going to dump it, and he's going to place and place and finish the latex. A couple shots of that. And then the burlap curing is an essential and very critical part of the operation. They have to be on that very fast, good saturated burlap. Get it down, get it covered as quickly as you can, and keep it saturated for the 3-hour minimum curing period that's required for the rapid set latex material. And then by 6 a.m. they're opening it up, or they're experiencing some very high liquidated damages that they do not want to take on. So just to kind of summarize some things here, I was pretty quick. North Carolina's been in the hydro-demolition business here since about 2004, going very strong. Been doing LMC for a long time, and have a lot of good qualified contractors, I think, that really helps them to get some really good installations in their state. You guys are identifying these as monolithic applications on your NBI data. So data collection is a little bit hard to track, but it is important to be able to understand where you do have those, because if you're going to continue to use a product and a process, you need to know how well it's going to work. And if you don't have a way to keep track of that, it's difficult to do. I'd say definitely North Carolina is one of the leaders nationally in rapid installation type projects. I don't know any other state that would be doing as many, especially overnight projects as North Carolina does. I know Virginia, like I said, has been doing quite a few here in the last 5 or 6 years. Louisiana has been doing a fair amount over the years. They haven't done many lately, but actually, interestingly, Louisiana has done some of the early rapid set installations back in the late 90s and 2000, 2001 timeframe. I was actually in Shreveport and did a presentation out there for the district there, and they were the same way. They did not have the data recorded in their MBI as far as latex concrete installations. So it was kind of funny. The people in the district did not even realize they were latex concrete overlays. So they had all this information there, but nobody knew it. So, but these rehabs are very doable overnight if you have to. You're probably looking at about 200 square yards a night, roughly. A good ambitious contractor can probably get a little bit more, but ideally you'd like to do weekends if you can, because you can really up your production if you can close it for a weekend. Instead of 250, you can be looking at 1,000, 1,500 square yards in a weekend, so you can get a lot more done. I think the key to these processes, though, is you have to use what we call the fast track cutting technique, which is basically a 1/2 inch into sound concrete is what you're going to calibrate for. But you want to mill for depth and just hydro to get selective removal of the deteriorated concrete and get your profiling. Mill out as much as you can. And then really, it's not about pressure. Lower pressure and more water is better. Lower pressures help you gain the selectivity. And when I say lower pressure, I'm talking like 15, 20,000 PSI. More water is better for your rapid erosion process and getting more amplitude in your surface. And then having experienced contractors is good too. And then Carolina Beach is an excellent vacation destination for you and your family. I'll say that on behalf of the Department of Tourism here. We hit up Britt's Donuts, supposed to be the best donuts in North Carolina. I don't know. You agree? Hey, it covers the 2 basic food groups, grease and sugar. That'll cover it. But they're good, and they were lined up 20, 25 deep for hours. I had a naughty dog at the boardwalk there with cheese and bacon. That was pretty good. We had a seafood boil. That was awesome. Boiled some shrimp and crab legs, lobster tails, and then peach cobbler. Nice warm peach cobbler. That was good stuff too. So I can entertain questions on hydro and rapid set or my beach vacation, whichever you want to talk about.
I want to know how much money you got paid by the Chamber of Commerce from Carolina Beach. Any questions? Thanks, Pat. Okay. Great job.
The preceding was produced by the National Center for Pavement Preservation. More information can be found on the web at pavementpreservation.org. Additional support provided by Michigan State University.